Talk. Tackle them. Gouge their eyes out with your keys. Because my laptop was stolen yesterday. Wait. Yeah, I do have the camera. It's not always on, and it stores data in the laptop.
Oh, no.
Is this me? This is room 67. Bro.
I'm sorry. It's Friday. I haven't had coffee.
John Drew.
Let's do this.
Oh, what are the backside?
Was it a hack?
Can we?
It wasn't a hack.
No. It was like my laptop was made before the age of Christ. It's like a Hewlett Packard Microsoft Word 98 machine or something. Like it's like. I mean, I guess we're not all technology snobs. I'm sure that has some sort of resale value as a paperweight.
Is the school's property?
It is school property, so I guess it's probably covered under insurance or something. But
They're like $50.
yeah, so I'm just really bummed because like that's like all the exams are on there. It's like,
I nowhere else.
so I got a do over. Rewriting exams is pretty challenging.
Oh.
Oh yeah, I have the paper version, so I can just like enter the data. But I also have a backup. Yeah, every year I can go back at the end of the school year, so I can go back to where I was at the beginning of the school year. Yeah, what? Right. Yeah, there's always that. Thank you, Pierce. Brilliant plan.
Was it someone at the movie?
What's that?
Was it someone at the movie or just like random?
I got my eye on Martin. That guy's. Ooh!
Where's the last one?
Was it still here?
Yeah, I'm still in.
Yeah, we had a miscommunication with who's supposed to lock the door.
Have you used a homeless man like who stole my chickens, right?
Hey, there's no evidence that the person who stole the chickens was homeless.
That's what
But-
I told him.
But there was some suggestion that it was a homie that lives over in the stadium.
There's a homie that lives in the state.
I'm still going to go around and make such a
I
break.
can't just get off that.
Our campus has like teams of people who live here.
All my turf wars at night.
I read
on the street.
What?
Yeah,
Like all over. Can you imagine this amount of real estate? Like, especially since Santa Barbara gets like cold and wet like 3 days a year. It's kind of convenient. There's like outdoor outlets and toilets for people. Trash cans.
Really lucky toilets at night.
I think so. But if you know your craft,
I know how to pick a water.
or you can maybe go to like a sporting event in the evening, or like early morning, 5. I don't know, man. Whatever, anyway, so just keep your eye open for my laptop is all I'm saying. If you want your solar house plans, they were all graded and your don't lose this papers were put in the correction box, and they should all be back in the corresponding drawer. I should caution you that it was very difficult to figure out some of your papers, because some of you, as instructed, took the 2 posters and the 3 don't lose this and the key and stapled it. Some of you picked up a bunch of garbage, crumpled it all into a ball, and used your foot to smash it into the drawer and tear up everybody else's packets. So the sloppy scumbags in period 2 sort of ruckused all the good work of everybody else. And I tried my best to put all the paper together, but I don't know how well that turned out. I should also warn you that about half of you got full credit by making easy submissions. Move the tree to the south, or show me where the intake was for convection, or whatever. Some of you just turned in the same stuff and like rewrote the same mistake. So you're like just wrote it more cleanly, but it's still not right. And a few of you, I think, just turned in what you had before. I thought that's where you turn in stuff, and that's not where you turn in stuff. So I'd say about 60% of period 2 got additional credit. About 20% of period 2 got the same credit. And about a couple of you, I have no idea what any of that was, I just left it. Yeah.
We need to present to
Am I mistaken, or have you already asked me that? Have you posed this scenario before?
Yes.
Does this sound familiar to anybody else?
Yeah.
Tim, do you remember what I said the last 3 times that you've asked me this? Just checking, Tim.
We need to make a time.
Pierce, did you hear what I said?
We need to schedule a time with you that's convenient and go to.
I'm just making sure that I'm not tripping because I know I've answered that before. Talk to Pierce next time. It's a sandwich of knuckles. Are you hungry? I made it for you. Do we want another one? Okay. I have students who are in cheer and they asked me to tell you that there's a cheer showcase Sunday from 9 to noon. I don't know, people get all excited about other athletic things, I don't know. Particle collectors. Was anybody absent yesterday and you need your particle collector? How many of you have already put it out as instructed? Now please look up. I've received a few questions, so for the last couple of you, here's your clarification. Flat, eye level, high traffic, weatherproof, label.
Oh wait, what?
Flat.
Oh,
Ah, I see, aren't you glad I asked?
I was like,
No, that's not flat, that's vertical.
I was like, what?
That's flat on the other axis. I mean horizontally flat. Do I need to write horizontal?
Yeah.
There is extra credit on Monday, and being that after school environmental film series is probably shut down for good now, it might be a good idea for all of you to attend this extra credit on Monday at 6:30 at San Marcos High School.
For sure, no. Absolutely.
I would encourage you to be a little more open-minded. This is just pointless color warfare for no reason. It is a bit more driving, but they have snacks.
How many extra points?
Here's the event. My very good friend Robert Gettler, who's a homie that I've known since I was roughly your age, he and I served on the board of directors of the Isla Vista Food Cooperative when I was in university. So I've known him like literally more than half my life. He's a really nice bro, and he teaches this class at that school. And tonight, he and his Earth Club students, like our Green Club, are hosting Conspiracy, or Cowspiracy? Yeah, Cowspiracy, which is like the conspiracy of the meat industry. Cowspiracy. And it's free, and they have like a panel of experts after the movie that includes Steve Gaines, who's the director of the Bren School of Environmental Science and Management at UCSB, like arguably one of the biggest hotshots in environmental science in the U.S. Steve Gaines is another old friend of mine who used to run the Marine Science Institute over there. He published a lot of those first papers about catch shares and some of the first research about ocean acidification. And he's a really big whoop for the environment and specifically how it affects the ocean and how that interacts with humans and money and economies. And he's a really big, smart dude. They're going to have some dude that's an expert on food systems and somebody who's an expert on human health. And they're going to talk about all the environmental issues around the meat industry. This actually relates to a bunch of our work in apes. You know, first of all, that methane is primarily released by livestock. You know that it's the most amount of land and resources dedicated to feeding the fewest humans. You know that it's the biggest strain on our American and California water budgets. And so this movie sort of ties together those things that we've discussed about the meat industry in this class. And then the panel afterward talks about like other stuff. And in the interest of full honesty, I think that Rob is a vegan. And he's otherwise a nice guy. And I am not myself a vegan, so this isn't political for me, but it is an important environmental topic. And food dogmas aside, it is a really good idea globally for all of us to eat less industrial meat. So, I don't know, I think it's a good idea, 6:30 Monday. And you have to sign up when you go, so listen carefully. You walk into the theater at San Marcos. Like ours, there are many entrances. You have to turn left toward the boys' room, and there will be a table that says San Marcos High Earth Club or something. And I'm going to try to find somebody from this school to stand there with the sign up for Santa Barbara High School students. It'll be on a separate clipboard. It'll be labeled Santa Barbara High School students sign up here. Any questions about that? Yeah.
How many points is it?
2, 6:30. 2.630. Anybody else? What? What? Erlia, speak!
There's a talk after the movie.
Yes? That was so nice. I never hear your voice. I'm dying. Baby. I'm dying. Baby. She just whispered, I don't talk like that in a whisper! You know what irony means? I know that you're in MAD, so you don't really sign up for classes so much, but I really need your help with 2 separate things about course signups. Unfortunately, grown-ups in Santa Barbara High School don't have good information about my classes. Their advice to your fellow students is often inadequate. I want you to find every sophomore that you can possibly identify as a sophomore and give them your honest personal opinion about this class. I'm not asking anybody to say anything which is not true, but I am begging every one of you to share whatever you think about APES with anybody who will listen before they have a chance to sign up for classes next week. Juniors haven't signed up yet, right? I mean, sophomores haven't signed up for junior year yet? And you haven't signed up for senior year yet. Next week?
Yeah.
Probably. Look, here's the problem. I hope you'll bear with me. Here's the problem, and this is a real problem. My class is something that students can choose to take, not something that they have to take. Getting you into PE is just a matter of logistics. Like, this student needs it, and we've got to find the right teacher that fits in the schedule. But getting students into APES is sort of like, oh, I don't know, little Jimmy needs a science class, let's throw him in APES. But little Jimmy has to say that's okay, so Jimmy says, wait, what is this APES thing? And they're just like, oh, you know, they talk about like butterflies and rainbows. It's all about like the environment and like, you know, rainbows. Like surfing. And kids are like, okay, sounds fine. And then they show up in the class, and I get like a full room. Like a quarter of my students drop in the first 2 weeks. They're like, Jose has too much sex appeal, I can't take this. Then, by the time that there are open spaces, it's too late to switch out of another science class. You don't want to switch science classes midstream. Some of you have experienced this. And so, for me, having students placed badly is like a triple catastrophe. I don't get the students that want to be here. Students who want to be here end up in another room. Students who don't want to be here end up in this room. All that general bad vibe is horrible for everyone. And the only people who can help me are you. I can't force you, but I'm begging you. Please, 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 please. Tell everybody in your athletic team, tell everybody in your theater classes, whatever you feel is true about my class. Because if they're like you, they're going to respect your opinion. And if you didn't like me, they're not going to like me either. And that's fine. Fun, boring, easy, difficult, I'm good looking but I'm not intelligent or whatever. But please do tell people about the class. Do you have something to say about that? Give me your hand up something. Yeah.
Are you doing food production next year?
The other class I need to announce is small scale food production. This was the only year that nobody has seen the class happening. Because this year we had to shut it down to do our construction project. Just so everybody knows, it's not really a class in the sense of classes at the high school. Small scale food production is extremely unusual for a few reasons. No paper, no homework, no tests, no syllabus, no calendar. There's no like class dynamic. It's just like a team of people that all work together to run that space. So basically, if you show up and you do work, that's an A+. It's an elective. The class is just like running the space. So you're only going to learn whatever you show up to learn. Like if you just want to be there and like not learn stuff, you could probably still get an A. You know, like, oh, I'm just going to take out the trash again. You could be just like take out the trash guy, and like that's a job that we have to do. So you like, take out the trash guy. Like, but I try to circulate all the jobs around so that you're take out the trash guy plus irrigation guy plus in charge of the chickens for a week plus in charge of the bees for a while. Like, the space down there for the first time ever next year will include fish. Bees are going to come back next year. We'll still have the chickens. We'll have our row crops. We're going to add more orchard space. We're going to do some carpentry work to like build some stuff inside the shade houses in the classroom. We'll do some fundraising. And, you know, it took 12 years of consecutive classes to build it up, and then they had to demo everything. So I don't even have dirt anymore. There's like a parking lot on top of my dirt right now. So next year, I really don't know what to expect. We're just going to do our best to like reboot the space.
Is it going to be like a 0 period or?
It's always 0, which is good and bad.
Oh, okay.
Obviously, it's bad because you got to wake up early. And in the middle of winter, like right before winter holiday, you show up as the sun is rising, like 2 weeks in a row. That's kind of rough, like waking up in the dark and like first things we're doing whatever you do in the morning in the dark, and then like driving to school in the dark, and you like park your car and start walking to class, and like, oh, there's sunrise, why not? Like that is kind of tough. Like if the weather's bad, we still have class, so like. The good part is it's kind of a good habit to get into. Like honestly, everybody admires people who wake up early. We just don't like to do it. You know what I mean? So like, hey, do a class and force yourself to be that guy that other people admire. Sort of like, you gotta quit drinking someday so you can be the guy that's pretty rad and party that doesn't drink. So like now you can't be the guy that wakes up early. I can tell you for sure, every student that's ever been in the class likes the idea of doing something different before you start the school day. Like being up an extra hour, not having to think about homework and handwriting and stuff, just to like be outside and work with dirt for an hour. Like that is actually kind of good for your brain. Like you have an easier school day. You know how everybody says we get a surf session before school, you have to read in school? So it's sort of that same thing. Like it's just like a different thing to do with your head and your body before you get started with school. But it's brutal trying to wake up early on you. Question?
Is it 5 days a week?
Oh, good. Protected. Were you trying? Oh, excellent. Excellent. You see that I noticed? You see that I noticed? It's for real. You really do whisper. I think it would be 4 days a week because all classes are 4 days a week now. So we have block schedule. So there's like a 0 period block. So on Thursday, instead of starting at 8:44, you start at 7 like normal, but then you still get one of your block days. So instead of 2 days that start at 8:44, you get 1 day that starts at 8:44, and then the other days would have been 7. Yeah.
Keep the way to the 7, yeah. So the class is longer.
I think so, yeah. And this is the first year that we didn't deal with that this year. So I'm just guessing that's what's gonna happen next year. I think that's the deal. We could probably negotiate something where we start at 8 on both days. If the class all votes for that, we just gotta meet the hours. So if all the students are down, I gotta warn you guys about a couple of things. It's just graded on hours. Like you're only graded whether you work. So like kids who lost my car for a week or whatever, like you can just take a 0 for the attendance and make up the hours some other time. A lot of kids last year did work in advance over the holidays so they could take finals week off and sleep in during finals week. The other thing I was gonna say, crap, it was one other one. Oh, the class fills up, like, usually on the first day of school, I have 40 students enrolled and like 20 students on a waiting list. And by the second week of school, we're down to 30. So I have to warn you, if the class is full, in case you wanted to do it, and the class is full and you sign up, first of all, you'll get priority in ranking because you were in my APES class. So even if they say you're on the waiting list, sign up anyway, you'll probably get bumped up to the class. If John Smith wants to take the class but he wasn't in APES, he gets bumped down and you get his space. So we switched the waiting list with the enrolled list of benefit students that have had APES already. Second of all, a lot of the kids bail out because waking up at 7 in the morning is pretty difficult after they're coming back from summer. So a lot of kids think they're into it, and right now they feel ambitious, and then when they get there, they're like, ah, never mind. Okay. Any other questions about anything about classes? Anybody having any problems signing up for AP tests? Can I help you with anything on the AP test signups?
Did you next week?
I don't know.
They end on the 18th.
What?
They end on the 18th, and after the 18th,
Put it next Friday.
What she said. Deadline. I really want to emphasize something about that deadline. A lot of my students are like, it's not really a deadline, you just pay more after. It's really the deadline to catch all the mistakes that could mess you up later. So it's like a really critical, important, deadly deadline. Because it is where the checks and balances are applied to make sure you have the right name and the right test document set. And they don't tell you that. Alright. Take out your assignment 9.3 and 9.4. We're going to finish talking about climate change today. We're going to completely bury the climate change today. And then we're going to get to other types of air pollution. English was the only AP test that I failed. And I had the best teacher. Best teacher. Mr. Gannon and I both had the same teacher at the same high school. Miraculously, we went to the same school at a different time.
How many years apart were you?
And we both thought he was the right teacher at that school. What?
How many years apart were you guys?
I'm not sure, but I think we've determined that it was different. I'm 38. How old is Gannon?
I think he's in school.
Ty, he looks so good. Those my days, man. I was hoping you'd say he's 26, and I'd be like, alright, well, he was 26.
I'd be so happy to give that compliment.
Are we talking about the same guy? Does anybody not agree that Mr. Gannon is like super healthy? Doesn't even look like that.
Is there a tall dog right there?
What's that?
He is tall. Well, that's Mr. Gamble.
Are we sure?
You're talking Gamble, yeah. And Gamble's pretty fit too, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see that guy in
No way
baseball.
that guy's 40.
You might not be. I think he's like, no, it was 42. Yeah.
38. 38. I used to be fit. I remember those days. Yesterday, the last thing we did was study goal number 24. 11 reasons why climate change is a really scary thing and all these consequences. And how many of those did we get?
I didn't get 94.
We didn't get to 24 at all? Oh, God. All right, here we go. Your book actually, this was a question in your study guide, and your book has some conversation about predictions about climate change, but your book had these predictions about like how much rainfall and what temperature by what year. I have a totally different set of predictions for you. Rather than the specific ones that are guaranteed to have some amount of error, I want to discuss the patterns in the future that we know are accurate. So none of this is questions that I'm going to give you the exact number of how it's going to change, but just the direction of the change and what that means for us. There's 11 reasons. Number one, we know that weather patterns will shift. Number 24, there's 11 reasons why climate is going to ruckus your generation. The number one reason that climate is going to ruckus your generation is that weather patterns will shift. Just so that we're all really clear about something, I'm not predicting which way they shift. Overall, the planet gets warmer, that's pretty clear. But some areas get colder, some areas get hotter, some areas get wetter, some areas get drier. I am not trying to make a single prediction about weather except to say that the average won't be average anymore. In other words, extremes become more common. I think all of you understand statistics. When you move away from the average, you're moving toward one of the extremes. That makes sense, right? Mathematically, all understand what I mean by that? Curious, again? What?
Like on the radio screen, they're saying that like next year might be a La Nina,
Huh?
but they're saying like it's a good thing. So is that the one? But I thought that was one where like we don't get.
So, first of all, what La Nina means, just so you know, I'm confused. I want to be honest about this. Your book says it's either one or the other. My meteorology and oceanography instructor when I was at university said that there's El Nino years, there's normal years, and the most extreme in this direction is what they call La Nina years. So I'm still confused about whether La Nina is the extreme opposite of El Nino or just the normal. Separately, whatever it is, we know that El Nino is hot water on the surface. That part's clearly what we mean by El Nino. And being a more hot water on the Indonesian side pattern could in some cases mean more rain for Santa Barbara. Because El Nino is a phenomenon across the Pacific. Santa Barbara gets a weird little weather blip because we're a part of the bight, the California bight. And we generate, because of our east-west mountains, we generate a high altitude ridge that often deflects the jet stream. So you've seen how 10 days out they predict huge storms, and 3 days out they go, never mind, it's going to miss Santa Barbara. The rest of California is above average rainfall. We're below average right now. All the western United States is more rain than average, except for this one little blip, the bight. From like Lompoc down to Ventura. So some people argue that if we didn't have an El Nino, we would have had more rain this year because the high altitude ridge wouldn't have been here. Complicated proofs of weather that Santa Barbara only gets more rain in El Ninos where the high altitude ridge falls. And usually that happens at the end of the El Nino, so that could still happen for us. The wettest El Ninos usually drop rain at the end. I don't understand. I know that it's called a high altitude ridge, but I can't draw it for you because I don't really know. Something about high pressure, low pressure, high altitude wind, downward drafting, deflects the jet stream.
trade winds start to pick up more?
What would stop the El Ninos is the equatorial trade winds.
And then it just falls off the
You're discussing phenomena at the equator. When I said the high altitude ridge, I mean these mountains. The equator is 35 degrees away here, so. So the connection between a high altitude ridge, that's just another variable in our El Nino La Nina equation. And it's not directly tied to this that I explained. In other words, I don't know, maybe La Nina year would be better. Sorry about all that side trip. I didn't really say anything meaningful and it took me 20 minutes to waste your time. Anyway, problem number one is that extreme weather becomes more common when the averages stop being the average and you get away from the norm. Prediction about the future for sure number two is ecosystems will shear. Who remembers this from Unit 5? What is ecosystem shear, Fiber?
It's kind of like where the temperature changes just a little bit, so it's kind of like a domino effect. So like some animals can't migrate downwards to go upwards, some trees, something like that.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Although I'm not sure how many of you can hear it.
No.
Ecosystem shear is when different species respond differently to temperature change. So 1 degree hotter, nobody dies from 1 degree hotter. But the flower might go extinct because the insect doesn't hatch at the right time to pollinate the flower. The migratory bird might go extinct because the lake hasn't thawed yet. The wolf might go extinct because it can't find baby reindeer when it's pupping its offspring, or the bear might go extinct because there's not enough sea ice to reach the weaning age for the cubs. It's called ecosystem shear, where the species survive the change in temperature, but the relationships in the ecosystem fall apart. Number three, we're already certain that agricultural zones will shift. And you might think like, oh, whatever, like, just grow the stuff somewhere else. But students, what happens if Illinois rainfall starts to occur in Nevada? Can we just take all the corn out of Illinois and grow it in Nevada? What are we missing?
The soil's not as fertile in Nevada.
The soil types, right? When we talk about agricultural zones shifting, we pretty much mean agricultural production dropping. We're going to have less food. Number four, we're also going to have less water. Did we talk in this class about where California stores the majority of its water? In the mountains, as frozen water, as snow and ice? Globally, that's true also. 80% of people in India drink glacier melt. And almost all the Himalayas glaciers are melting. In other words, on a global warming planet, there is less fresh water because there's less winter storage capacity. Someday you should Google photograph projects about disappearing glaciers. There's a bunch of alpine historics, a couple from Yosemite actually, who go up to the mountains and photograph glaciers in the same spot as historic photographs to show how much smaller they are. Yeah?
In the movie last night, Inconvenient Truth, Aldor talked and showed like pictures of the receding glaciers.
I think I remember seeing that in the movie, but I guess that probably wasn't Convenient Truth. Yeah. So there's a lot of those photo projects. One of them is done by a graduate of Brooks, actually. But a couple of climber dorks from Yosemite are running one of those in the Patagonia right now. They did a bunch in Pakistan, now they're doing a bunch in Patagonia. and they go to the place where the first guy took the first photo. They find the oldest photo of the Martin Glacier. And they look and they say, okay, 1917, it was taken on January 3rd. So they go there and then they line up all the mountains and they're like, okay, so it must have been right here. And they take a photo of the glacier. And when you print the photo compared to the old one, it's like, whoa, no more glacier. Number 5, you remember from Unit 6 that disease is becoming more deadly for humans? Almost all of that is climate issues. So number 5 is disease becomes a bigger problem for humans. You could write in your notes to check Unit 6. But some of the basic issues, when people have less food and less water, they're more likely to be sick. Diseases survive outside your body longer when the planet's warmer, so transmission goes up. And you know, diseases have a range. Zika lives in one part of the world. As that mosquito can spread, so does the disease. But how many of you own a mosquito net that you could deploy tonight? So 3 of us have a mosquito net. The rest of you, good luck. I mean to say that culturally, we're not ready for new diseases. Your doctor might not recognize it as malaria, just think you have a flu, and you miss your treatment window. The disease thing is sketchy. Did somebody have a question? Yes?
I don't know if this is like self-explanatory, but how would there be less winter storage capacity for water if like the poles are getting colder? Like how would that melt?
So the only place that's technically getting colder is that part of the Atlantic. It's not actually polar getting colder. Separately, we don't drink from the poles. The water that I'm referring to is on the land masses. And all the land masses are projected to get warmer. Well, with the exception of a little bit of England. Yeah.
So in the movie last night, it showed the process of how like, a glacier was broken off or melted in North America, and like went into the Atlantic, and it stopped the flow of the hot and cold water, and then like Europe froze over.
So Greenland ice sheet, a sheet of Greenland ice, a part of Greenland ice sheet.
What happens if Greenland like melts?
That is the main threat to the ocean conveyor belt current. The thermohaline current is primarily fueled today by wind-driven evaporation in the North Atlantic,
So would it get colder?
which leaves that water denser because it's got more salt, less water, so it sinks. If you freshen that salt, then it's less dense and it floats, so you turn off the dropping, which means you turned off the rising, which means you turned off the lateral. So Greenland melting stops the conveyor lateral movement. That's why there's no more hot water being delivered to Europe, and we're already seeing that.
Is Greenland all ice? Just really
No, Greenland is landmass. It's a landmass with a gigantic ice sheet that stretches out over water on all sides. Like the South Pole. Number 6, we also know that sea level will rise. This is an interesting topic where the science nerds kind of got it wrong early on. That's why I hate to predict the future. We thought sea level would rise much faster. Turns out we were wrong about a whole bunch of details, and so sea level has risen more slowly than we thought it would. Remember, I'm not making any detailed descriptions about the future, but we know sea level will rise, and you're all worried about the wrong problem. When I say sea level rise, everybody thinks about like a tsunami, like I'm gonna flood, and then I'm gonna drown, I'm afraid of the ocean. But I want to remind you that sea level does not like, oh my god, here comes the ocean, and then you get like swept away. That's a tsunami. Sea level rise will kill exactly 0 humans. But imagine how expensive it is. Some people said sea level will rise 20 feet in 1 century. Nowadays, most scientists are saying that's going to take many centuries. But there's a lot of variation. Forget the details. Imagine what would happen if Santa Barbara's sea level came up 200 feet. Sorry, 20 feet. 20 feet up means you've come in very far. You realize that? Because the coast is gradual. So when you rise by 20 feet, you're picking up about a mile of the coastline. Everybody telling you about that? Imagine what that means. We'd have to move the harbor, wastewater treatment facility, many of our roads, about a tenth of our population, State Street, the courthouse, the police station.
Can we do it at the courthouse?
What?
Can we do it all the way to the courthouse?
20 feet sea level is within the foundation depth of the courthouse and city hall. And whatever, let's imagine we could save it, but it was coastal, fine. But freeway, the railroad station and the railroad tracks, our funk zone, which is a whole bunch of businesses, that's what UPS is and stuff. How many gas stations would we have to move? The Santa Barbara Zoo, the boardwalk. I already mentioned all the business on State Street, right? Almost all Santa Barbara's hotels are near sea level. And then imagine that that's not a one-time deal. Like, you don't move the harbor now and wait 200 years for sea level to make it usable. You're constantly battling changes in the dynamic of the harbor versus the ocean. Every one of those years. Think about the economic implications of the wastewater treatment facility. Oh, the trash processing thing over there? Yeah. So some places have done that, but the problem is you don't just build it once because sea level keeps coming. So you can try to build it really, really high, and then you're looking behind this crazy wall. But then your city's underwater. So you got saltwater intrusion into groundwater, and you've lost all your drainage, so you're just in a puddle anyway when it rains. If you build a dike, you got to pump out all your water and get your fresh water from somewhere else because your groundwater's all ruined.
It's kind of like the mosquito treat in the past, like kind of a good example of that.
Yeah, imagine that plus 20 feet though. Right? Like, it's not a 1 minute thing. Everybody's worried about sea level rise as a thing that you just like do and get it over with. I'm worried about what that adds to our economy for the period of forever. Because it's not like it's over after 20 feet. Watch this. Almost every major city on Earth is on the coast. Half of humans live within 300 feet of sea level. You know, we put the big cities there because our planet was explored, colonized, imperialized, and industrialized during the age of ocean navigation. We still get the majority of the planet's food out of the ocean, so we need access to the water. So almost all the big cities are right on the coast. So basically you're taking 1/2 of humans on the planet and adding a variable, a wedge into their budget. That's what I mean about sea level. Oh, and by the way, it's not new water. Only 10% of sea level rise is new water pouring in. What's the other 90%? What's the other 90%, Colton?
Expansion.
Thermal expansion. The ocean gets bigger when the ocean gets hotter. The same way that mercury climbs the thermometer, water climbs the land masses. Okay, we gotta go fast.
At a point where that like just like tips out, or like the temperature on Earth goes up 20 degrees, then it expands that much.
That's right, yeah, I mean, until it boils off as a gas.
We're at that one.
No, I don't think so.
I just-
Right. So no, there's no point where sea level rise stops and temperature keeps going. Everybody thought it was new water, and it's like, well, once you melt all the ice, sea level's done. But melting ice barely adds anything because almost all the ice on Earth already is in the water. Like an ice cube in a glass, that's already equalized for density, right? You know, the ice cube floats 10% out, but when it melts, it fills the space with the 90% that was below. So when you melt sea ice, that doesn't change sea level. Right? The only water that's new to the ocean is what used to be on land reaching the ocean, like glaciers and the caps on rock. But that's actually not that much of our planet's ice. So very little of the projection of sea level rise is for new water. Most of it is just bigger water. It keeps getting bigger in temperature. Number 7. So far, we've talked about CO2 as a temperature problem, but for the ocean, there's a much bigger problem called ocean acidification. I think you all remember that oxides plus water makes acids. Well, we've got this whole ocean full of water, and we've been adding oxides to the air. By the way, not just carbon dioxide, we've also added sulfur oxides and nitrogen oxides. So we've got a lot of extra acid in the ocean. And I want to challenge you to consider water temperature always changes. Water pH never changes. So a clam can survive an 80-degree temperature span for short periods. But they cannot survive 1/100th of a point pH shift. Ocean ecosystems are much more pH sensitive than they are temperature sensitive, and we just recently started paying attention to that problem. Number 9, another thing happens in the ocean, the currents change. What? Number 8, currents change. Of course that affects seafood, but imagine what that does for international trade. What if the currents make it so we can't afford to get our Happy Meal toys from China, but all of a sudden it becomes beneficial to get all of our cheap crap from Canada? Can you imagine the economic implications of that? Maybe, but imagine what that means if China can't afford to be the global producer of cheap stuff because the currents no longer favor shipping from China. That. Number 9, we know that the severity of hurricanes goes up, not the total amount of hurricanes, but the severity of them. Now I'd like everybody to look at 1 through 9, that list you just made, read them over and imagine what they mean in terms of the global economy. Look at 1 through 9. Imagine what they mean economically. Number 10 is global economic complications, to put it nicely. Everywhere across the planet, economies suffer when you do all those things that you just wrote down. And then number 11, we get to make a new problem for the planet, something that didn't exist when I was born. Look at 1 through 10, and imagine how many people might need to leave their countries. It's called environmental refugeeism. In your lifetime, more humans will leave their country than in the combined history of humanity until your lifetime. You take all the refugees from all the wars and you add that up, and there will be more migration during your lifetime than that previous number. Because, you know, some places have crappy weather, some places have struggling food systems, some places have struggling economies, food shortages, disease outbreaks, everybody loses. So number 11 was environmental refugeeism. And I worry that we got exactly 1 hour below the other periods. I started here in many of my classes, so we really have to hustle next week. That's what you got for talking politics with me. Is that what happened yesterday? Talk politics?
That's what happened today too.
Jose, am I supposed to have a bunch of stuff there?